미래학자이며 다빈치 연구소장인 토마스 프레이님께서 준비하고 계십니다. 큰 박수로 맞아주시기 바라겠습니다. It is my great pleasure to invite you to the podium for your keynote speech on the theme of the cutting edge of learning and the future of education, Mr. Tomas Frey. 다시 한번 여러분 큰 박수로 환영해 주십시오. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Hi, it's a great honor to be here with you today. I actually learned how to program way back in 1973, and I was learning on the Fortran programming language, which was one of the precursors to all the other languages that eventually came out. But programming has taken a lot of interesting twists and turns along the way. But we're a very backward-looking society. We're backward-looking because it's just human nature. See, we've all personally experienced the past. When we look around us, we see evidence of the past all around us. All information that we come into contact with is essentially history. So the past is very knowable, but we're going to be spending the rest of our lives in the future, so it's almost as if we're walking backwards in the future. As a futurist, my job is to help turn people around, to give them some idea of what the future might hold. So how does the future get created? Well, the future gets created in the minds of everybody around us. We all participate in creating the future. Certainly, some of us have more influence than others. But people make their decisions about the future. Is it possible to actually put the presentation down on these monitors here? People make decisions today based on their understanding of what the future holds. So I use this phrase quite a bit. The future creates the present. This is a little different than what most people are thinking. Most people think, well, what we're doing today is going to create the future, but from a little different perspective, it's these images of the future determine our actions today. So here's the key thing. If we change somebody's vision of the future, we change the way they make decisions today. So that's my promise to you here today. I'm going to change your vision of the future, and as a result of that, you're going to walk out of here and make different decisions. I do have a crystal ball at home. I get asked this question a lot if I have a crystal ball, and yes, I do. It was sitting around at home collecting dust, and my wife asked me if I could just take it to the office, and I reluctantly, I put it in the car, and I was driving down the road. And I was no more than 4 or 5 minutes down the road, I realized that my crystal ball had started to fire on the seat next to me. Now, luckily, I was able to put it out, and it didn't cause any major problem, but this is the sun shining in. The crystal ball is a giant lens. This is like early science experiments. I should have known better. Luckily, I was able to put it out. It didn't cause any major damage. But then I had a big revelation that my crystal ball had given me, obviously, that the newspaper headlines the next days were going to say, "Futurist killed by his own crystal ball," and he didn't see it coming. So that's my disclaimer. I don't see everything. As Larry Page says, he's the CEO of Google, he says that the reasons companies fail is because they miss the future. I happen to agree with that. The first time I listened to an audiobook, I thought it was cheating. I thought, wow, this is way too easy. I don't have to spend all this time deciphering all these characters on a page. And I thought, wow, this is very simple. So I thought it must have been cheating. But then it occurred to me that the process of reading involves looking at characters on a page and turning them into mental concepts and images. Listening to an audiobook is a little bit different process, but it also involves turning sounds into mental concepts and images. So however it works to get the information in your head really shouldn't matter. So is it better to read a physical book or a digital book? Is it better to watch virtual reality or to play with physical toys? There is no one-size-fits-all formula for learning. And so that's the important thing that we all need to understand. There's lots of ways of learning. So as we move into this world of technology, things are constantly updating and constantly changing. And we find ourselves being constant newbies. From one day to the next, this program that we'd used just yesterday, the button that we need to hit is right there on the screen, and suddenly it changes. So then we have to figure it all out all over again. And so this is very disconcerting, this idea that we're constantly, the new guys, learning things over and over again. We got to get used to that because that's the way it's going to be. My brother and I had worked on a project and spent a few months trying to figure this out, but we were trying to develop what we called the Book of Now. And with electronic books, we can actually have information fed into an electronic book, and all the information is updated on a minute-by-minute basis. So it was the Book of Now, and it had all the facts and figures, kind of like an almanac, but it would have lots of information that we needed, and constantly being updated. So this seemed like the ultimate information source, and anything that we wanted to know about, we could get it right then and there. But all the scenarios we created about having a book like this, over the long run, they seemed to break down. A lot of the key elements of context and relevance, timeliness, all of those things started to fall apart. So the Book of Now turned into the Book of Yesterday, and we never did get it off the ground. One of the things I get quoted on time and again, I made this prediction several months ago that by 2030, over 2 billion jobs are going to go away. I have newspaper media, TV stations, magazines are quoting me on this on a constant basis. So when I made this statement, it wasn't intended to be a doom or gloom statement. It wasn't intended to say we're going to have 2 billion people unemployed in the world. It was intended to say that we're going to have to update our skills and change jobs, create new jobs at a faster rate than ever before in history. So this is what I refer to as the level problem. Now this is a common tool that a lot of people have. We use it for hanging pictures straight on the walls. We use it for doing carpentry work. But once we download a level app, then we no longer have the need for that tool. So we don't have the need for as many aluminum frames. We don't have the need for as many glass bulbs. We don't have the need for people doing the assembly work, the shipping, the receiving, the retail stores that are handling it on the retail end. Every time we download a mobile app, we're eliminating a piece of a job. It's a very tiny piece, but when we're downloading billions upon billions of mobile apps, we're eliminating lots of jobs. Oxford researchers looked at this issue, and they concluded that by over the next couple decades, they looked at 700 different occupations and concluded that 47% of them are going to disappear over that period of time. Coincidentally, this works out to right around 2 billion people. But it's not just the low-level jobs, it's also the middle-level jobs as well. Uber, Airbnb, lots of the sharing economy companies have figured out how to automate middle management jobs out of existence. In the past, a taxi company would have middle management people in charge of the drivers, in charge of the cars, in charge of the maintenance work, in charge of logistics. All of that has been eliminated with software. See, on one hand, we're eliminating jobs. On the other hand, we're freeing up human capital. But just because jobs are going away doesn't mean we're running out of work to do in the world. That's actually kind of ludicrous. There's lots of work left to be done. But actually having jobs to match up with all the work that needs to be done, we're still going to have lots of messy problems along the way. So for this reason, we have a lot of people that are thinking that we're going to have some sort of guaranteed minimum income because we're just not going to have enough jobs. I actually see it going the other direction. I see that we're going to go into an era of super employment, that we're going to have more jobs than we can handle, but the retraining part is going to be critical for getting people up to the skill level that we're going to need. So for this reason, I wrote the 3 laws of exponential capabilities to show how we're going to have exponentially greater capabilities as a result of using all this automation. So the law number 1 is that with automation, every exponential decrease in effort creates an equal and opposite exponential increase in capabilities. To give you an example of how that works, in 1850, the average transportation speed around the world was around 6 kilometers an hour. Over a lifetime, somebody would travel roughly 110,000 kilometers. In 1900, it jumped up to 12 kilometers per hour. 1950, we tripled up to 36 kilometers an hour. And then in 2000, because so many people were flying, 110 kilometers an hour. And then 2050, if we're following that trend line, we should be up around 335 to 340 kilometers per hour, somewhere in that range. But over a lifetime, we go from 110,000 kilometers in a lifetime to 11.1 million kilometers over a lifetime. That's a 100-fold increase in 200 years. So how are we going to get there? Law number 2, as we raise the bar for our achievements, we also reset the norm for our expectations. And then law number 3, as today's significant accomplishments become more common, mega accomplishments will take their place. So we can now think faster, know faster, and do faster than ever before in history. So where will our next generation jobs come from? The answer is they're going to come from future industries. So when we look at when the internet came about, the internet actually created this massive platform for the creation of new jobs. We had lots of new jobs that got created as a result of it. A few years ago, then we started having the smartphones, and this mobile technology revolution hit, and that created a new platform with lots of new jobs. The way I'm looking at it now is we have at least 8 new platforms coming out of the woodwork that are each presenting themselves as internet-sized opportunities. Over time, each one of these will grow up to be a massive, huge opportunity, and each one will touch the lives of every single person on the face of the earth. So that includes driverless technologies, trillion sensor movement, Internet of Things, 3D printing, contour crafting, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, flying drones. All of these are going to turn into mature industries over the next couple decades, and are going to spawn a huge number of business opportunities and jobs along the way. As William Gibson, the science fiction writer, wrote, the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. So in our quest to create future jobs, all existing industries will be disrupted. I mean, there's no safe industries out there. We have to disrupt everything that we're doing today. So in the fintech world, financial technology space, the good entrepreneurs have a way of sniffing out where the money is. And there's lots of money in the financial technology world. So as a result, we now have over 8,000 startups in that space that are attacking all the existing players. Now, each one is going after a single revenue stream, and so I like to think of this as the little piranhas taking bites out of the giant whale. This is death by 1,000 paper cuts, but we don't really know how this is going to evolve yet. It looks to me like there's lots of partnerships being made with the little guys and the big guys, and sometimes there's acquisitions, sometimes there's vendor-dealer relationships, but that's going to evolve over time. So every year, my wife and I go to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and every year they have tons and tons of new product introductions. It's this big showcase for lots of new things that are coming out of the woodwork. But a friend of mine comes back from that show and he always says the exact same thing. He always says, yeah, but there was nothing new. And I always look at him in amazement because I was just blown away by all the new stuff. But in a lot of respects, he's right. Every year there's thousands of televisions on display, and these televisions are a little flatter, a little bigger, a little brighter, more downloadable apps, better battery life. If you compare televisions from one year to the next, we don't see much difference. If we compare them to televisions 15 years ago, there's a substantial difference. So I use this phrase quite a bit. It's the iterators end up being more valuable than the innovators. See, when we have a truly innovative new technology, something that just changes the world, we have to work our way through the crappy stages before we get to something that's really useful. And we have lots of years of crappy technology to begin with. Virtual reality is a good example. We've had virtual reality for many years, and it's taken a long time to get to the point where it is today, where it's finally at a point where everybody starts wanting to have a virtual reality set in their house. So the iterators are the engineers. They're the ones that are out there constantly changing things, constantly improving. These can be software engineers, mechanical engineers, industrial engineers. These are the ones that are constantly upgrading things. All of this technology is being turned from physical products into digital products. And once we turn something into a digital product, it starts going up this exponential growth curve. And the exponential growth curve is deceptive. It catches us off guard because it grows so fast. So as an example, solar power right now is only responsible for roughly 2% of all the power in the world, but it's been shown to reliably be doubling every 2 years. So if that's the case, if it continues to grow at that exponential growth rate, then within 12 years, solar is going to be the dominant form of power in the world. Now we're going to have a few breakthroughs along the way, but that's entirely possible. So we're transitioning from the physical world to the digital world, and that includes everything from physical cars to digital cars, from physical homes to smart homes, and physical cities to smart cities. Innovation's being parsed into far smaller pieces, and that's what allows all of us to participate. As an example, if one of you wanted to create a mobile app is not a huge undertaking. A lot of times a mobile app can be created in a few hours. At the same time, communication is being parsed into far smaller pieces. So we no longer have to write lengthy letters to somebody to convey our ideas. Sometimes the communication is just as little as one little character, one emoticon. See, we're entering a world that's defined by scalability, and things are scaling very fast. Let me give you some examples here. It took a little over 200 years to reach the first billion bicycles in the world. 2003 is when we roughly hit the first billion bicycles. It took around 120 years to reach the first billion cars. That was roughly 2010. It took McDonald's 23 years to sell 1 billion hamburgers. It took Facebook 8.5 years to reach 1 billion users. It took Uber just 5.5 years to sell 1 billion rides. And Uber has a competitor in China Didi Chuxing. It took them just around 11 months to reach 1 billion rides in China. Now, as all of this stuff is scaling, there's lots of different metrics for looking at it. If you look at downloads and views on YouTube, the person that broke the 1 billion view record on YouTube first was this crazy guy. And he's still the record holder on YouTube. But it took him 157 days to reach 1 billion views on YouTube. That was in 2012. And since then, another 26 artists have achieved that 1 billion view record, with the one doing it in the least amount of time being Adele in just 87 days. So it's entirely possible, if you're in business today, that you can have a competitor that comes out of the woodwork and is challenging you on all fronts, and suddenly they show up with 10 million customers or 100 million customers, and you didn't know about them because they didn't exist 2 weeks ago. That's the type of world we're moving into. As my favorite physicist, Max Planck, likes to say, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So teacherless forms of education are needed to meet education's growing demand. This is a picture of me. I was giving a talk at the TEDx event in Istanbul a couple years back, and I was talking about teacherless education. After the event, one of the executives from Google, who happened to be sitting in the audience, came up to me and said, "You know, we're really interested in teacherless education because we want to educate Africa, and teachers don't want to go to Africa." Now, that was a very revealing moment for me, because no, teachers don't want to go to Africa. They don't want to go to Pakistan. They don't want to go to Siberia. They don't want to go to Antarctica. There's lots of places that teachers don't want to go in the world. So we need more teachers with what we're doing today. In fact, we have a shortage of roughly 18 million teachers globally. In fact, 23% of all kids growing up today don't have any education whatsoever. Clayton Christensen, the Harvard professor, has come out and said that he's predicting by 2019, I think he's a little bit early on this, that half of all K through 12 education is going to be done online. Now, what he's referring to is young people sitting at a computer, and half of their education is being done in this way, working on topics that are of interest to them, and the other half being done in social settings and classrooms and so on. But the tools we have for doing education are evolving, and they're changing, and they're getting much better along the way. Virtual reality, as an example, is going off in thousands of different directions. This is virtual reality being used as a form of therapy for people that have had some traumatic event in their life. This is a way of jumping out of a plane without actually jumping out of a plane. Young kids can grow up and know what it's like to walk on the surface of the moon, to walk in the land of dinosaurs, or to know what it's like living in 4th century China or Russia or some other era, because they can just immerse themselves in that type of setting. And I like this one here because they're teaching this lady how to fly. They got a fan on the front there. She can flap her wings and get a sense as to what it's like to actually fly around the world. So here's a more elaborate vision of where virtual reality is going. I'll come to that in just a second. But when it comes to teacherless education, if we continue to have to insert teachers between us and everything we need to know, we cannot possibly learn fast enough to keep up with the demand for tomorrow. As Albert Einstein says, education is a progressive realization of our own ignorance. The quantified self is a concept that was developed by Kevin Kelly. He said, through engineering, we are engineering our lives and bodies to be more quantifiable. And what he's saying is that today we have the ability to measure all the inputs and outputs of the human body with far more precision than ever before. So we have the ability to accurately measure the quality of air that we're breathing, the quality of water that we're drinking, and the chemical composition of sweat coming off of our arms. So if we look at this idea of the quantified self, as we get more precise in how we deal with all the ins and outs of the human body, we're also going to start understanding the ins and outs of the human brain as well. So if, as an example, we were able to actually monitor 947 different categories of skills and knowledge and attributes and characteristics in our brain, is that reasonable? Are we going to be able to do that in the future? So imagine connecting some sort of a headset, you put it on, and then connecting a scanner and you knowing exactly what jobs you're qualified for. Is that realistic? Actually, Larry Page says that Google's going to be able to do that in the near future. He's convinced that their system will be able to do exactly that. So the role of education is changing. It's no longer possible to predict the education needs of business 4 to 5 years in the future. We're currently preparing students for jobs that don't exist, using technology that hasn't been invented to solve problems we don't even know are problems yet. That pretty much sums up the whole situation. But we have a need to rapidly reskill future generations. I've gone through and projected out that the average person entering the workforce in 2030 had better planned to reboot their skills 6 times throughout their life. Now, when they go through that many changes in life, the retraining process, the reskilling, people want to do that in the least amount of time, not the most, which makes traditional colleges a very poor fit for that type of education. So as an example, when Oculus Rift came out with their new device, and then Facebook bought them in 2014 for $2 billion, and the Oculus Rift is a form of virtual reality. It puts you into a whole different world. There was an instant uptick in the demand for virtual reality jobs. Lots of technology that was tied in with this. So this is a look at what virtual reality might move into in the future. Do we have sound on this?
What will they enable us to do? New ways to visualize our work.
I have an idea for the fuel tank.
New ways to share ideas with each other.
How are things going your end?
I just put the images in OneDrive.
Perfect.
More immersive ways to play. New ways to teach and learn.
So put the new trap in the place of the old one
Now what?
and tighten here and here.
New ways to collaborate and explore the places we've never been.
Look at this formation. Let's take a closer look.
And new ways to create the things we imagine. Because when you change the way you see the world, you can change the world you see.
So that just gives you an idea of what future virtuality might look like. This is more of augmented reality. Now that's going to be blended with virtual reality. And currently augmented reality is glasses that you can see through. Virtual reality is headsets that take you entirely out of the world that you're presently in, into a new world. But when Facebook bought Oculus Rift, there was this instant uptick in the demand for jobs. And nobody was teaching it. Nobody was teaching, obviously, the Oculus Rift version because it was so new. So bold companies are instantly triggering the need for talented people with skills to grow with the cutting-edge industries. So we've been looking at this concept of micro-colleges at the Da Vinci Institute that I run. We started a group called Da Vinci Coders. Now this is people that want to shift gears in their life, they want to do something different, so we're teaching them just the basics on how to become a coder. This is to explain this idea of a micro-college. It's an immersive form of post-secondary education done in a short period of time. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So this is a scene from one of our classes there. But at the end, you get a certificate. You're not getting a four-year bachelor's degree, but we are the first one in the country to offer micro degrees, though. We see this idea of micro colleges going off in 1,000 different directions, and including everything from how do you program a virtual reality experience? How do you become crowdfunding experts? How do you design parts for 3D printers? Even how to become a brewmaster in a brew pub. As we have to shift gears a lot in life in the future, we're going to develop a lot more shorter course scenarios for doing this. So this is the idea of a micro degree. We were the first school in the world, actually, to offer a micro degree. Now there's quite a few different companies and education institutes offering this. This is based on 1,000 hours of learning. We even took it a little bit farther, and we explored the idea of micro credits. So traditional college credit, we know what that is. We thought, well, maybe each micro credit, you have 100 of them, that could be worth one traditional college credit. So would it be possible, I mean, the average person is out learning things on 11.8 hours a day, they're consuming information. So somebody that goes to a movie, as an example, you take a short test afterwards, and if you pass, then you get 3.2 microcredits. You read a book, take a test, and you get 14.7 microcredits. You play a video game, that's a learning type of video game, you take a test, and you get 8.7 microcredits. Is that something that we want to do in the future? Is it something that we want to somehow credentialize the normal learning activities that go on in our lives? Well, maybe. So when it comes to artificial intelligence, we currently don't know what the limits are. There's lots of new developments happening on almost a minute-by-minute basis right now. So we stand on the brink of this technological revolution, and it's changing virtually everything around us. I like to think of this idea of hot and cold running AI as we can apply it to all of the things that we have in our life. The reason artificial intelligence is taking off is because of this convergence of lots of technologies in the past. They're finally coming together in a way where it's all happening all at once. I'll give you some examples here. The early adopters are going to be naturally the driverless cars. Healthcare is going to jump on this in a big way. Drone technology, virtual reality. We're going to see this enter our lives in virtually every industry out there. This is one I really like. This is a young guy. His name is Joshua Browder. He created this chatbot lawyer. So if you get a parking ticket, you can submit it to this website, and they challenge your parking ticket for you. And so far, they've been successful in 64% of all the parking tickets they've worked with. Prospera is a robot that actually looks at plants, and it can spot problems with crops far sooner than the farmers can. So as an example, you can see on the left side there, there's some plant-killing mold on that leaf. In this one, there's some caterpillars and mildews have messed up the chili peppers. So this is what people see, and this is what Prospera sees. And so using artificial intelligence, it's able to detect things at a far earlier stage. There was an attempt to have artificial intelligence read all of the Harry Potter books and then write the next big volume of Harry Potter. That was a big failure. But that's early on, though. I mean, the first computers weren't really good at playing chess or playing AlphaGo either. That has changed over time. So in the future, are we going to have major novels written by artificial intelligence? Maybe. Another artificial intelligence listened to all the Beatles songs, and it actually created a brand new Beatles song. So this is the song that they came up with. One of the things I'd like to know is who actually owns the song now. It's based on the Beatles and everything they've done. Do they get any royalties off of this? So here's another song here. This is called Mr. Shadow by Flow Machines. So if you had 10 songs that were written by humans and 10 songs written by artificial intelligence, which would you pick? So those are just some quick examples. Now we're using artificial intelligence in the healthcare world. Google bought a company called DeepMinds, and DeepMinds is challenging lots of assumptions as how artificial intelligence will work. So they've used DeepMinds on detecting problems with lesions in kidneys, and as a result of it, they're able to scan the patients and to detect far more problems with the lesions. And in just Great Britain alone, they're projecting that they can save 10,000 deaths a year in British hospitals. Google's also working with ocular alignment problems with young people at a very early age, and that's easily solved if they detect it early enough. And Microsoft is actually looking at the human genome as just another programming languages. So rather than fixing health problems by giving drugs, they're looking at actually recoding the human body. They're projecting they can cure cancer within 10 years, along with a host of other diseases. So is AI going to replace drivers, musicians, and doctors? Is AI can we reprogram ourselves as Microsoft has proposed? How will AI disrupt, demonetize, dematerialize all the other industries out there? So a couple weeks ago, I had this light bulb moment, a big aha as to how the future of education is likely to come about, and it has to do with artificial intelligence. So DeepMind has been playing these video games, and they were using DeepMind to play Breakout. Now, Breakout is an Atari game. It's a very primitive Atari game, basically like Pong. And they didn't give it hardly any instructions other than you just had to maximize the score. So after 30 minutes, it was still pretty terrible at playing this game. So I'll show a short video clip. This is after 30 minutes of playing Breakout, and you can see how it was missing a lot, and so it wasn't very good. However, after 2 hours, it had started to master the game, and even at a very fast pace. So this is what that looked like. And so it got very good. It was learning on its own, it was teaching itself, and it just got better and better and better. And then after 4 hours, it got to the point where it not only had mastered the game, it optimized all the strategies, and it figured out how to dig a tunnel around the side of the wall and send the ball around the back in a superhuman accurate way in a way that the designers of the game didn't even know was possible. So this is what that looks like. See, suddenly it went around back there, and it just beat everything then. So DeepMind then, they applied it to 49 other Atari 2600 games. Now, admittedly, these aren't the most sophisticated games out there, but in each situation, it learned how to master the game. And that was very interesting because it learned as it went. After a few hours, it got better and better and better, and it was able to maximize the score in each one of these. So if we look at the idea of cognifying education, if we apply AI to teacher bots, this online education that's designed to teach me things, the new game will be to find the fastest way to teach us. So each of us has different proclivities, has different idiosyncrasies, but over time, the artificial intelligence, the teacher bots, will start to understand all of these unique human differences that each of us has. It'll apply it to the things that we're most interested in, because we want to learn this topic, so it's going to be teaching us that. And it learns what are the preferred tools, the learning styles that we have. It'll learn how to keep us engaged in learning. It learns all of the little crazy things, the quirks that we have that make us unique individuals. And it'll even keep us learning in the face of distractions. So AI is going to suddenly know when our skills are deficient. It'll know what's needed to bring them up to speed, how and when to schedule your training, and exactly when you've mastered this topic. And so it'll keep training you until you've mastered each of these subject matters. So this is the new game. We will still have the need for teachers, but they will take on more of a coaching role. AI is going to be able to analyze your facial expression, know when you understand something, and know when you're going to have problems with something. And so it'll keep working until you finally have mastered all these different things. So throughout this training curve, individual learning will begin to scale far faster than anything we've dreamed possible. And as a result, learning speeds will maybe double, quadruple, maybe even 10 times as faster than anything out there today. Now, if we get 10 times faster, that's a total game changer. Suddenly, we're mastering things. Why spend 4 years in college when you can do it in 2 months? Is that what we're looking at? We don't know what the limits of AI technology is just yet. So one of my quotes I use is that we shape our future and then our future shapes us. This technology that's out there, and it's all being driven by software. Software is driving each one of these 8 new platforms that we're creating. So the future is ours to write. By 2030, the average person will own printed clothing, will live in a printed house, will have packages delivered by drones, will own more than one robot, work as a freelancer, frequently use driverless cars, and will be capable of accomplishing 10 times as much as the average person today. We're entering a period of unprecedented opportunity. Why is this period so important? Because humanity is going to change more in the next 20 years than in all human history. At the same time, the risk factors involved, the breaking points that we're creating, are going to increase exponentially. So lots more things can actually go wrong along the way. And our children's children who haven't even been born yet are counting on you. They're actually counting on the people in this room here to make the right decisions. As Steve Jobs says, right now is one of those moments when you are influencing the future. But sometimes our best efforts just look a lot like this. Yeah, pretty much just like that. Thomas Edison says, opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. Isn't that the truth? So any of you that want more information about what we do at the Da Vinci Institute and some of these ideas that we have, sign up for our free newsletter. And I thank you very much for having me here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your outstanding presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, we need another big round of applause to him. 다시 한번 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다. Thank you so much.